Hello, I'm your host Nadine. This week on Just a Dog podcast, I'm joined by Hannah Greeno, founder of Canine Needs and the creator of Canine Facilitated Coaching, a holistic wellness process exploring the bond between human and dog as a path to growth, healing, and self-awareness. With nearly 15 years in the field and formal training under the late John Rogerson, Hannah brings a relationship-first, observation-led approach to canine behaviour. She's accredited by multiple bodies including the Guild of Dog Trainers and the Association of Coaching, and has featured on Sky News and Channel 4. Hannah now works mostly online and in London while also volunteering for the Blue Cross Pet Loss Support Team and supporting rescue dogs in Portugal through fostering and rehoming. This conversation goes far beyond behaviour, into trust, healing, and the quiet ways that dogs mirror our inner worlds. Enjoy. Hi, Hannah. It's so lovely to have you here. How are you today?
Hi, Nadine. Yes, I'm very good. Thank you. How are you?
Yeah, good. Really, really good. Duna's on the sofa snoozing, and we've just had a lovely little walk. And I was looking forward to our chat today. Where are you dialing in from? Are you in Portugal?
I am in Portugal at the moment. Yeah.
Amazing. Has winter hit yet?
No, it's still like late 20s. So just right.
I'm so envious. Goodness. We've actually been really lucky today, weather-wise. It's been a beautifully sunny day, but I am feeling the cold creeping in. But I'm brave today because I'm wearing my t-shirt. It's a Goofles original.
Oh, I love it. I
Don't know if
love
you could
the
see
colour.
that.
It looks great on you.
Thank you. Right, so let's get straight into it because there's a lot of ground to cover. Firstly, I'd like to learn more about you and your journey when it comes to dogs. So if you want to start with maybe the first dog that you owned and then how that relationship led you to where you are today.
Yes. So we always had border collies growing up. My mum is obsessed with border collies. She thinks there's no other dog breed for her, and so she'll always have them. And so the great thing about border collies is they make you feel like an amazing dog trainer when you are not necessarily. So as a child, I really just, thought that was my thing. Like I could train dogs, but really it was just border collies were very good at understanding my thoughts about what I wanted. So I think like our first dog, I was maybe, I want to say like I think it was a baby. And I've obviously got pictures of her. Holly, she was called. But my first memory I think, because I think we had some bad luck with border collies in the beginning. Like the first one got ill and died. The second one, there was a problem with her as well. And by the third one, actually my parents ended up splitting up and we had to rehome the third one. So we really didn't have good luck with dogs in the beginning. And then I think I was maybe 8 when we got our family dog that I remember growing up with. So that was, and then we got another one when I was 9, which
There's lots of border collies.
they didn't know at the time that was not a good thing to do. So we had these 2 border collies, and they were sisters, and they were also a bit of a nightmare. But I used to take them to dog training classes by myself, like go up the road to the village hall and, like walk around in a circle with an old lady shouting at you, like that sort of thing. And then I used to do competitions with them, like obedience competitions. Like my mum would drop me off at the start of the day and pick me up at the end of the day, and I'd be like, I got Roselle.
That's so cute.
Yeah. So that's kind of how it started with border collies and a run of bad luck, I guess.
Did you live in the countryside or in a city?
No, I grew up in Bristol. So we weren't
Oh.
really in the countryside, but the countryside was only about 10 or 15 minutes away. And then when I was a teenager, I had horses. So I used to, and I feel like that was before agility was a thing, because we used to take the dogs around the show jumps.
So, how did you cope with having a working dog in a, I guess, urban environment?
Yeah, well, the first 3, I think we lived somewhere in like the east, like by the sea. I feel like it's like East Anglia, somewhere by the sea. But yeah, the ones where I was growing up, I was always busy with them. So, and I was kind of like one of those geeky kids that was a tomboy and didn't really, I was always outside playing with slow worms. And always just sort of training the dogs and playing with the dogs. And so that was kind of my childhood, really. So I was always outdoors, and even though we weren't necessarily in the countryside, like we had a massive park and then we were always in the street. Like back then, people used to let their dogs out of the door. I'm showing my age. And people used to let their dogs out of the door and then, they'd pootle around down the street or whatever and come back home again when they were ready. Okay, then the dog warden came and started picking up dogs. But really, it wasn't like how it is now. Like we used to walk past dogs in the park and you just say, hey, your dogs wouldn't play. They would just walk past each other. It was a very different dog culture when I was a kid.
What do you think, like, without going kind of sidetracking too much, but what do you think is the main difference between, because I didn't grow up in the UK, I came here when I was about 15. So yeah, what's the biggest change between then and now?
It's the definition of the word socialization. So when we talk about puppy socialization, it should be teaching I think the second definition is teaching a being to behave according to its social status. So for a dog, that would be learning to like actually ignore other dogs in public, but also sitting under the table at a cafe, behaving on a train, like all being exposed to things that they'll need to acclimatize to later on. But we obviously see it as like the puppy socialization parties, or like they should be playing with other dogs, and that's really the key difference.
Ah, interesting. Okay, so it's not that there's just way more dogs.
Well, also, yeah, there is. I would think, like logically, it seems like there would be way more dogs. I don't have any figures to support that. I just feel like that would make sense.
Yeah.
But also, I feel like, especially because my business is based in London, like I've always just worked in London. And the other interesting thing about London is people generally don't really have like family around them. And I think a lot of people in London are quite lonely. And I've definitely had clients that like have got dogs to meet people, to
Uh-huh.
kind of be in like a social group that allows them, people are much friendlier when you go out with a dog. Everyone wants to stop and speak to you. And so I think that has a lot to do with it in London, is that people will get dogs to kind of help with their loneliness, but then it means that they're stood around in groups talking to each other, the people. And
Uh-huh.
then obviously the dogs are just running around them in circles, getting into loads of trouble and kind of going a bit feral.
Yeah, that's true. Do you still travel to London often from Portugal?
Yeah, I still work in London, yeah. So I go there probably every few months, every couple
Hmm.
of months I'm in London, yeah.
What do you do for work?
So I'm a dog behaviorist, and trainer. And I mean, I have fingers in a lot of pies, but generally, like I'm a dog trainer and behaviorist. Um, that's kind of my main part of my business.
Right.
Um, and so all of my clients are generally based in London. Like I do a little bit in Portugal, but more for like people that need help, really. Like I'd like to give back the amount, like I like to keep it balanced so that I give back. And then I have different aspects of my business, like the puppy match service is matching people with the right puppy to try and avoid what used to be, to try and avoid puppy farms, which is a little bit better than it used to be. Um, and then I do business consulting, and I have a new service called Canine Facilitated Coaching,
Mm.
which is, so basically everything I do with dogs revolves around relationship. So when I'm training and analyzing dogs' behavior, I'm really looking at the relationships between the dogs and their family and the dynamic that's in play there. Um, and that does, for me, provides like huge results. Like, and that's how I've always trained, through the relationship with the people. Um, but there's definitely a limit to that. Like, I feel like sometimes I would come up against, for example, like there'd be this little toy poodle that was very yappy at the door. And so, I would do training with her and she was fine and everything went well. But then when the dog was with her owner, the dog was just so sensitive to sound. And eventually what we worked out is that it's the owner's really exaggerated startle response that was setting the dog off. And so basically, to help the dog, I ended up having to separate the dog and the owner,
Oh,
because the owner couldn't control her startle response. So if she heard a sound, she would go, and obviously the dog would go nuts.
right.
So there's definitely limits to like where you can go with dog behavior when you need to get results. And you're like, okay, well, I can't really help you with your starter response because I'm not like in that world. So
Uh-huh.
just gonna have to separate you guys. Um, so now what I'm seeing is and this will probably relate to a lot of dog behaviorists, is, and we do talk about this all the time as dog professionals anyway. But really, like, our relationships with our dogs have a lot of our personal projections in them, and some of them, or most of them, aren't necessarily very accurate.
Mhm.
For example, like one of my earlier examples of this was, we had a deaf border collie just a few years ago. She's died now. But my mum was, sometimes feels left out of the family. She lives with three boys. She's got a bit fed up with it. But when our border collie went deaf, she was like, "Oh, poor Gem. She must be so sad that she can't hear anyone talking to her anymore." But I was obviously knowing Gem's behavior, the dog, and she was fine because she reads things, like reads facial expressions and body language anyway.
Yeah.
So well, why would my mum say that? What a strange thing to say, because the dog's actually fine. Okay, she might have, taken a while to adapt to being deaf, but she was fine at that point. And I realized that she wasn't talking about the dog. She was talking about herself,
Mm.
because she's living in a house full of boys. I'm obviously mostly over, like, I'd spend a lot of time in Portugal, and she doesn't have that, or didn't at the time have that connection that she was yearning for. And that was being expressed through her interpretation of what was happening with the dog. And then about 4 years ago or so, my relationship with my daughter's dad broke down. And then I got into so many relationship rabbit holes. Like, I was really like, got into it, like hit rock bottom, and I'm like scrolling around in the depths of the darkest holes. And I realized, like, I learned a lot, and I did a lot of self-study. I did a life coaching course. So like, I really got into it. And I realized that it was just constantly in front of me when I was working with people and their dogs. And so it just repeated all the time. And I had a lot of resistance around, like, I don't, canine facilitated coaching, like, what is this? I can't facilitate this whole new, innovative thing by myself, like, without really knowing what I'm talking about. But it just never went away. And so I was like, okay, fine, I'll do it.
So how do people find you? As in, like, firstly, how do you find clients, or how do these clients find you? And what are some of the typical or common challenges that they face that they come to you for?
So, well, finding me, I mean, really at the moment, it's probably through Instagram, which is at Hannah Greeno _
Plugs are welcome.
Yeah. But because I'm redoing my website at the moment, it needs a bit of like modernization, and but also word of mouth. And I kind of move in a lot of these like women's circly places. And so, like, putting it there, and in the wellness area, basically, with, people that are in wellness that have a dog. Those, I'm kind of merging those two zones.
Yeah, that's really interesting. That's really fascinating because, yeah, I mean, there are lots of parallels to be drawn between our relationships with dogs versus, our relationship with the world and our environment and our own behavior and reflection and internalization and experience, et cetera, et cetera. So you've just connected the two and seen, okay, yes, dogs need help, but actually their owners do.
Yeah, and I think because my sort of clientele are, women mostly, but also people that really love their dogs so much, which I love, obviously, and all my clients are amazing. But there's just an element of like, and especially because I also do pet loss support for Blue Cross, so I'm on the phones, listening, on speaking to people about grief and losing their dogs. And there's just this whole theme that I couldn't shake or get away from, that is quite hard to describe, but it's really almost as if we're running away from ourselves
Mhm.
into our dogs.
Yeah.
um but because, we have so much love to give, and we have so much caring, and, maybe back in the day or at some point in history, that would be channeled into, much more of like community living, or, you would always have to worry about, be taking care of somebody else, or the elderly in the community, or the elders, or the children, or whatever it was. But where we don't necessarily have that a lot now, I think that we're taking this whole innate thing that we have, especially as women, but humans in general, this innate offering that we kind of have in us, and driving it all into our dogs instead of a huge community. And so our dogs don't necessarily need all of that. And in fact, in some cases, it creates more problems than it solves. And so I'm working a lot with these sorts of people who I think, actually, if we had like a percentage of that for our inner child or for ourselves or for our self-care and well-being or our relationships with ourselves, then that could really, really improve people's lives.
Yeah.
And the reason that I'm kind of targeting the wellness space is because I'm after people that are already looking for like trying to improve their lives. Um, because it can get uncomfortable. And to answer your question, like what I see a lot of is guilt. Really, I see a lot of guilt. Like people just feel so guilty about their dogs and their dogs' lives. And on one hand, I'm working with rehabilitating like rescue dogs, so I'll foster and rehome dogs as well. And I think, well, those ones you can feel sorry for, not the ones that have everything that they ever wanted. Sat in their cozy bed, cuddling their owners. Like they have.
Hmm.
There's no reason to feel guilty about their quality of life, which is incredible, or what they're providing them, or yeah, maybe they feel guilty about, I mean, it can be all sorts of things, but just generally the daily life that they're providing for their dog. Oh, I feel so bad for him because of nothing, but they'll
Actually,
come out with something.
I totally understand. That resonates with me now because I feel guilt about having Duna on a lead. I feel guilt about her having to walk 2 flights of stairs as a greyhound. Feel guilty about, not having a space that is enclosed so she can run free. Yeah, lots of little bits throughout the day, having to jump in the back of my car and not having steps for her. Like, I just wanna treat her like the queen that she is, but it's where do you think that comes from?
Naturally, like I think we would have, and also it's kind of the luxury of life now is we have less concerns. Okay, we have lots of concerns globally, and you can really get into the news and get
Yeah,
yourself some concerns, but generally speaking, like our daily lives are quite smooth, probably compared to how they've been in the past.
yeah.
This is what I imagine is happening. And I think there's probably lots of different aspects to it as well. But generally, um, we need things to care for. And if that isn't our community, if it's not our relationship, if it's not our children, if it's not, it has to be something. If it's not a hobby that people are, get really into, like I'm gonna collect those stamps or whatever it is, like I think we've always had it. It's just maybe it's never been dogs to this extent before.
Yeah.
And you see it with breeders and people as well. Like the breeders are obsessed with like the lineage and the history and the health testing and all the good stuff that they should be concerned with. But that really is like a lifestyle choice, yeah. And so I think we've always had that. It's just that maybe it's never been dogs to this extent because
Yeah.
maybe. Mm,
It
yeah.
100% agree with you. I think, like, we do live in a somewhat frictionless world where, look at run clubs, look at ultra marathon running, like all these challenges where we put our bodies and our minds through these extreme conditions for what? Just because life is actually in comparison to maybe baby boomers, what they grew up with, very different and very easy. I mean, the world, there's a lot going on, but really a lot's going on in our minds
Yeah.
versus actual danger right here, right now.
Yeah. And that coupled with our innate instinct to really take care of something,
Mm.
to be invested in like our family and our community. And if less people, I mean, I don't have the stats for this either, but it feels to me like less people are getting married. It feels
Yes.
like less people are having children.
Yep.
And so, but we still have that instinct. So how are we going to satisfy that genetic instinct that we have? And it probably does come down to our dogs and cats and other pets, which is not necessarily the best thing for our dogs.
No, I mean, that's a heavy burden to carry for them. They are our, emotional life boys, if you could call it that. Let's say I recognize some challenge that I'm facing. So my dog is really anxious. And I can't leave them alone at all. And this prevents me from having any semblance of a natural, normal social life. And, someone that I know tells me, "Oh, have you heard of Hannah?" So I contact you. And then what happens from there? Like, yeah, take me through your process.
So well, normally and especially like traditionally and what I've always done, that would be like a behavior consultation. So and then we would in a behavior consultation, we would look at your relationship with your dog because most dogs that are anxious, it's a relationship imbalance in that they don't feel safe, or they're the ones that have to do the protecting because maybe we don't have enough boundaries at home. For example, we can't use our words in the way that we might want to and say, hey, don't worry about it, I got this. So we have to use boundaries, really. And that can be things like, invite only on the furniture, or sit to go through the door, or just some sort of boundaries in the house, maybe a room that they're not allowed to go in. Um, and that helps to establish that, like, I'm the decision maker, I got your back on this, like, just trust me on this, and what I say goes, basically. um and so that is normally like an overview of like anxious dog behavior with most dogs, is normally that sort of relationship imbalance. But if it was to do with canine facilitated coaching, that would be, well, first you would come to me with like a sort of personal development angle, in that, like, I want to explore my relationship with my dog and get some more benefit out of it, or um go into the whole wellness thing. So if it was in the coaching container, that would be more about, well, why don't you have any boundaries with your dog? Like, what's uncomfortable about that for you? And then you'll often find that, like, okay, well, that person doesn't have any boundaries at work either. Or, they're uncomfortable with saying no to their boss or partner or friend, or, so then we kind of get into that and, like, okay, well, why is that? Do you feel like, and often people will be, like I said, about guilt, they might feel guilty for saying no, or they might have like burnout and be spreading themselves too thin and just be saying yes to everything and just be like flatlining, and then the dog is just completely overwhelming them. Or their dog is their safe space for when they get home, and they're just like, okay, just hang on to you and you make it all better. Like, no pressure, mate. um so yeah. So but also I do work a lot with anticipatory grief as well. And that will be where I see that most often, is like when we've revolved our world around our dogs, and the threat of that not being available anymore is sold is really difficult to deal with. And the threat of having that taken away and being left with oneself
Uh-huh.
is excruciatingly uncomfortable and obviously
Gosh,
painful.
a
And
lot of this is escaping, isn't it? It's escaping ourselves.
yeah, and I guess it's another one of those things that we all know about with, you've got alcoholism or gambling or smoking, or, we've got loads of escapism behaviors, and it's kind of a normal part of being a human at this point. We're like, okay, just
Yeah.
trying to get through it. But whether, those things are all personal choice. They don't really affect, okay, they might affect people around us, but they don't affect who we're trying to care for really well. And so it's not to say that, like, it's a real issue across the board, because I don't think that everybody does that. But it's more if it's just like one person, one dog, that dynamic. It also goes back to this innate thing of like being a mother, in that, like, they say that you should never have to lose a child, right? But our dogs most generally live much less than us. And so when we get a dog, we pretty much know that at some point that dog is going to die before us, in theory. So it's like, if we're pouring our heart into it in the same way that, that if we're saying our dogs are our children, then how are we supposed to deal with losing our dogs? And how, knowing that your dog's probably definitely going to die before you, how are we supposed to deal with that? And the pain that comes with that, if that's the level that we're living with them at.
Yeah. Is that kind of the types of issues or challenges that you, or cases that you deal with when you work with the Blue Cross?
Yeah, yeah. And also, well, also it can be more like, socially complex cases, but a lot of the time it's loneliness, and the animal that they've lost is the only thing that is keeping them from loneliness. I know, it's really heartbreaking.
That is really heartbreaking. What do you think it says about us as individuals and as a society where, like, our primary attachment is a dog? Not that there's anything wrong with that, but like in comparison to connecting with other human beings.
Well, I mean, I'm living like in the middle of nowhere on a mountain in basically a community. And so like 10 years ago, I went and lived in a community, and then I went and stayed in an ashram in India. And like, I then started like community living. And I think like I have a huge, well, basically the situation in Portugal is an off-grid project. So there's no way I can deal with that by myself. Like I have to have the community around me. And if the car breaks down, like you have to call your neighbor. Like you can't, the nearest shop's 20 minutes away. So like we are all kind of connected in this community, even though we have different houses. And I think that's probably the biggest issue is if we don't have other people and events and closeness and connection with people, of course we're going to look to satisfy that with our dogs.
Yeah.
You know, and that seems it, the whole thing, even though, you know, I'm saying that it's not necessarily the best for our dogs, it's very logical. Like it makes a lot of sense. There's nothing that you think, oh, well, why would people do that? You know, it does make sense. Um, and when you start kind of reconnecting with humans, and this was a big thing for me because, as you may have noticed with your podcast, I don't know if this would have become a theme, but most people that work with dogs don't really like people very much. And that's normally, again, going back to like some trauma or, you know, some negative experiences that they've had, or they've been let down, or nobody was there for them, or, you know, lots of issues there that we don't need to unpack right now. But yeah, I definitely was one of those where like I was bullied, and, you know, girls were horrible to me. Like all my friends were boys for a bit because girls were mean. So like I had this whole journey of like basically returning back to like people, and not necessarily that the journey is finished because I probably still have trust issues, but understanding that most of the time people are doing their best. And yeah, for most dog trainers, like obviously you have to work with people, the people are paying, you know, like, and that's a challenge for a lot of people. Um, so I think like humans probably have a long way to go in trusting each other and building community. But I think once you start to reconnect with humans, and like I said, I went to live in this community where it was like a yoga community and everyone was so kind. And it's the sort of thing where like someone does something for you, and you could just cry because like you don't know this person and they're being so kind to you. And then you're all living together as like a big family. And there's something so beautiful about, well, like my story of like journeying, like returning to people because I'd shunned them for so long, you know?
Yeah.
And that there's something really magical there. And
I'd love for you to kind of like just rewind a little bit. Like, yes, this is a dog podcast, but it's all about your journey and, you know, what led you to this point. So if without prying too much, please share that journey and kind of like when did you realize that you were disconnected from your own kind and kind of what was the catalyst for you to change that?
so, well, definitely when I was a child, because I was happily like outside. As long as I was in nature, I was fine. Like I was with the slow worms up the trees, with the animals. I used to have a sheep that I would chat to, you know, like I'm pretty sure the sheep chat back to me as well. So, you know, like I was fine with nature. And I think probably because like my dad left when I was 4. So like that must have started the whole problem, I would imagine. And then when did I realize that that was an issue? I think that definitely probably about, I want to say like 12, 13 years ago, like I lived in London and I'd had terrible like friends, like horrible friends. And I think I eventually sort of softened. Like I think I was quite hard. And maybe so one of these kind of socialite people in London had like started this community project. And it was around the time of like everyone was doing yoga, everyone was vegan. I was vegan for like, I don't know, 6 years or something, 4 years. Um and so I started to kind of really like feel stuff. And I think the veganism thing, I learned a lot because now I don't like share my views with people in quite such an adamant way. um but I think like I forced myself to feel the pain of the animals, and that's how I kind of got vegan in the first place. There's this horrendous documentary called Earthlings, which you can't watch, and it is soul destroying. um, but basically, I had this thing where I wasn't gonna turn it off, and I was gonna watch it, but it was the worst thing I've ever watched in my life.
Oh my
Horrendous.
gosh.
I wouldn't recommend it at all. Um, but I think from then I sort of felt like I could sit with uncomfortable stuff, and the most painful things, I could still survive them, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Um, and then through several breakups and things, every time you like break up with somebody, you kind of do this soul searching thing. So I did a few of those.
Well, not everyone, so well done you.
Right. Well, yeah, I feel like women do that. Oh, yeah, it happens, right? You break up with somebody, you analyze your whole life. So, like, I did that quite a few times at the end of my 20s. And then I think after a whole load of like pain, basically, I sort of was able to then like withstand that. And I also did a lot of like self-healing work, like stuff with my parents. I did an ayahuasca trip, like I did a lot of like discovery stuff, and I was really kind of dedicated to like understanding myself and my psyche and like my behavior and why I thought the things that I thought. And like I've never felt that I fit in until I kind of came to this community in Portugal. And I was like, oh, this makes way more sense.
Yeah, so by the sounds of it, on your journey, you kind of had to fall apart to fall back together, and in that falling together, you found connection with other, I guess, like-minded people, sense of community, a sense of belonging, and just a more positive space. So I guess making those positive choices for your life trajectory has led you to more positive things. So I guess that's created that knock-on effect. If we tie that back to the canine facilitated coaching, is that does that kind of philosophy or approach inform the approach that you take with your clients as well?
Yeah, I would say that it probably is in every area of my or every aspect of my life. But yeah, definitely obviously the focus of the container, the coaching container is the other person and their interpretation of their own lifestyle and environment and, interactions with people. Um, but yeah, I guess like we have a lot that we can complain about, but really, like say if I guess the way that I kind of integrated to humans was by being able to like basically living off the fact that I can always choose. So, like if people are going to treat me badly, I don't have to have them in my life. And if people are going to treat me well, then I want to spend more time with them. I want to invest more into them. And so like I guess when you're a child, you don't have that option. And so that's maybe how it starts, a negative trajectory. But then at some point when you grow up and, once your brain's fully developed after 25 and all of that sort of stuff, and you realize, oh, wait, hang on a minute, I can actually choose now whether I want to put up with this or not. And then having that kind of power returned to you that was maybe you didn't have access to when you were a child feels then that you can trust yourself. And so therefore you can trust the people around you because you can trust yourself to make the right decision if that person treats you badly. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, it does. I think it depends on what kind of upbringing you had and what your experience was. I guess there's a core wound there, isn't there?
Yeah,
If it was enough of a big deal, if you felt you didn't have a voice, for example. And ironically, dogs don't. So there might be a bit of a connection there as well.
that's
Slightly abstract, but yeah.
That's true, actually. Yeah, because I didn't feel like I had a voice. So that, yeah. And I think a lot of people struggle with that from what I can tell with the women's circles. They're always talking about it.
Yeah. I think it's really interesting actually how we we get dogs to kind of fill a void in our lives, but at the same time, the dogs that enter our lives become mirrors, and reflect back to us kind of what our challenges are and where we still have some way to go, what we need to be working on. I guess that really depends on whether or not we've got the self awareness or not. I don't want to make this a gender thing, but I know that women navel gaze a lot more than men do. And so perhaps in that kind of process, are we creating problems where there aren't any, or are we just way more tuned in to seeing them?
That's really interesting, actually. Yeah, that's because I definitely feel like there is like a deeper sensitivity there, but that could also be like our innate nurturing instinct. I have this like little image of like our dogs over I don't know generations or millennia, just waiting for us to kind of like pay attention to them, and that they are kind of trying to tell us, that like, did you know that you do this? I can help you with that, like, so I don't necessarily like, are we creating problems? Probably not. I feel like we just are more sensitive to the issues that are in our lives now. And that could be because, we have incredible relationships with our dogs. It could be that we're so bonded to our dogs and they are so close to us that we are now seeing in them what we need to heal in ourselves. So I don't feel like we're necessarily making up problems where there aren't any, because there are plenty of problems.
Yes, no, that's true. It's just when you look at the scope of types of problems that you could have, yeah,
Mhm.
it depends on how much it affects your life. Like if we go back to the anxiety that would pass on to the dog, obviously not being able to leave the dog on their own is going to create a problem, which then creates isolation, which then kind of, snowballs and becomes bigger than it needs to be.
Yeah.
Um,
I
but
mean,
people wouldn't know that if they didn't have that level of awareness, and if they didn't like have access to people like you, for example. They might just think, "Oh, the problem is the dog."
yeah. Yeah, and, like, I don't necessarily, because there is a bit of a culture now of, like, blaming our dog's problems on us, and I don't necessarily subscribe to that either, because, I've seen plenty of situations where the humans have been on point and the dogs have been terrible. It's not always, train the owner, and it all comes from the owner. Um, so, I don't wanna, like, blame us for the problems, but also, like, our dog's anxiety, for example, could be reflected from us. And so, a lot of people won't make the decision to do something for themselves. They'll make a decision to do something for their dogs, but they don't necessarily prioritize themselves. For example, like lots of people that I work with will like give their dog the highest care, the best food, the most amount of time and priority. But then when it comes to themselves, they might just have a sandwich while standing up or something. Like that kind of parallel where like their dog is treated like royalty, and then they're like the slave that is running around cleaning bedpans, like.
Yeah.
And so sometimes I think that like our dogs want us to kind of learn these things about ourselves. It's almost like a rebalancing, like a coming home to ourselves, and it can be uncomfortable because we're facing stuff that maybe we've escaped from for the last 30 years or whatever. So but ultimately it's always going to be there niggling, I feel anyway, that unless it's always going to be driving situations and things in our lives without us really knowing. And then our dogs are like, hey, I want to help. I want to help. And then we're just like, I just want to feed you nice food. And they're like, but I want to help you. And like,
Yeah.
but have a fish, you know?
But I guess so. How do people realize there's a problem?
I mean, I don't necessarily know if I'd even class it as a problem. It's like you either kind of want to understand yourself and your dog and your relationships in like a deeper level, or you don't. You're not bothered. It's not necessarily, when it becomes a problem for the dog, there'll be behavior problems and then they'll know.
Right. Okay. So I think what I've been doing is I've been looking at it through the lens of I have a problem, I need a solution, let me go speak to Hannah. And so you're saying this is more a service for people who are proactively looking just to deepen their bond, to deepen their understanding. It's not that they're solving a problem, it's just that they are, yeah, I guess a bit more reflective and wanting to, yeah, have a bit more depth, more
Yeah,
connection.
that's why I'm kind of promoting this in the wellness space at the moment, is because I know that these people are already trying everything that they possibly can. They're on family constellations and trips here and retreats there and, fasting and yoga and this, they're doing so much to try and get to like the root of like their pain essentially. Or, some other, the root of their like uncomfortable feelings, or it's not necessarily pain, but it can be the root of whatever it is they're trying to get to the root of.
Right. So this is self exploration via the dog.
Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
dog is ultimately the mirror reflecting back. Okay, might need some work in
Yeah.
this area.
Yeah,
Okay.
and so it opens up conversations that you wouldn't necessarily otherwise have, because especially from the perspective that I have, like because
Mhm.
I've been in dog behavior for 15 years, like if somebody tells me something, oh my dog's doing this, that, and the other, or like with the guilt thing, oh I'm so awful, like my dog didn't get like had her dinner half an hour late today. I don't know what I was thinking. Like I know that that's not an issue for the dog. I know that unless you're doing puppy training, like that's not an issue for the dog. And so the fact that somebody will have said that to me, I know is nothing to do with the dog and everything to do with them.
Mhm.
So it helps to open up these conversations that means that we can explore deeper, where, people might be having, talking therapy, or they might, and this isn't therapy, by the way, this is coaching. Just need to put that in there. But there are some parallels in that it opens up deeper conversations, which can lead to insights, these light bulb moments where you're like, oh my God, yes, I didn't realize that I was doing that this whole time, or whatever it is. And so it's kind of like a healing modality in that it opens more doors and more light bulb moments and more insights when you're already on this journey of trying to get to the bottom of like what the hell life is anyway.
Is that a one-to-one thing or a group thing? Because I could understand in a group setting, again, that facilitates connection with other people because you're able to connect via what is revealed through your dog and therefore kind of explore that.
Yeah, I mean, well, at the moment, because I've just started it this year, at the start of the year. So at the moment it's one to one.
Okay.
But I mean, it would be so fascinating as a group dynamic because it's really fascinating to see how others speak as well, about their dog and also I think a lot of people feel alone with these things that come up and they think, oh, well, it's just me and my crazy quirks or whatever. But so many people are the same, and so many people are like, especially, like the my dog is my baby thing, or like, why am I so obsessed with my dog? Like lots of people have this now.
Hmm.
And it's not necessarily, like I say, it's not necessarily a problem. It's not necessarily that there's something wrong, but it's like if you want to understand that in a deeper way, if you want to get to the bottom of that, if you want, and it does then, as a knock-on effect, have a positive impact on your relationship with your dog. Because then your dog's like, oh, finally, I've been trying to tell you this for ages. you know?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So that is, I mean, yeah, it's very niche, isn't it?
It's quite niche. Which is the problem with it, it's like it's very difficult to kind of get it out there because it's a whole niche thing where you're just like, I'm sorry, what now?
Well, it took me a while to wrap my head around it because I was thinking, okay, maybe, ultimately it's about the individual. It's not about the dog. And I think
Ultimately,
in
yeah.
my head, I was thinking it's about the dog. But no, it's about the individual and their journey and just kind of like, yeah, going on that journey and what the dog reveals about them or mirrors back to them, ultimately working on those things on an individual level by default improves the relationship with the dog, but not just with their dog, also, I guess, the world with their, relationships, which is your expertise.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and it does sometimes cross over, like it will go into dog behavior as well. And I found that I can actually switch hats in a
Yeah.
session. Like so it's like, okay, well, this is really upsetting me that my dog does that. Okay, well, we can get to the bottom of that as well. So, that's and when I started this, I didn't know if I was going to be able to like switch hats from like, coach to dog behaviorist, but actually it is quite smooth and it does work quite well. So we can cover the issues with the dog as well, because often, well, sometimes there'll be no issues, but sometimes there will. And that will prompt somebody to like get in touch with me because they're like, okay, well, I've noticed my dog does this. It's not a major problem, but what's going on?
Yeah. At least your lines of inquiry considers the human within that. So it's not just the problem with the dog. Da, da, da. It's really interesting how your unique set of skills has brought you to this point. When you look back with hindsight, like, do you feel you are exactly where you need to be right now?
Yeah. Yeah, always. Yeah.
Yeah. Very
yeah. I mean,
interesting because there was a choice there. You chose to explore this avenue a bit further, and I guess how did you I'm curious about how you've validated it, like the demand, I guess.
well, no, not necessarily the demand, because I'm still kind of waiting to see if it takes off. Like, I don't know if people are interested in this or not, or if it's just my weird, like,
Let's
geeky
see.
thing that I'm super interested in. I've had a few clients. I've got another one starting tomorrow. So we will see, like, if it becomes a thing. But I feel like, and sometimes I am too early with stuff. Like, it might be too early for this, and maybe it's going to be like another 10 years before this is relevant. Hopefully
Right.
not. Um, but at the moment, well, firstly, I did choose it, but I didn't feel like I wanted to choose it. I put this off for like 5 years
Right.
because I didn't want to. I was like, what? Get out of my brain. Like I felt like it was something that I just kept seeing, kept repeating. And I was like, no, no, if I ignore it, it'll go away. And it just never did. So, like, I felt like, okay, I did logically choose, but I felt like I had less of a choice than I would have liked.
Yeah.
Um, and then secondly, like I did a case study program first just to see if like this even worked at all. So I did a case study program, which was like a free exchange. And for people to be able to like give me their feedback and like, okay, what worked, what didn't work. Um, in fact, I might hold like one or two spaces for that going forward because I still feel like, I really want to kind of in-depth feedback on, like this service. So yeah, I did a case study program, and that was really just to gauge interest, and people were interested in it, and then it kind of helped me develop, like, okay, well, actually that didn't work very well. Like, I found that homework does not work. Like,
No.
go away and do this, and then I'll see you next time, okay? And no. So, and I didn't know that until I did this case study program. I was like, yeah, well, there's loads of stuff that we can do. No. So, it's taken a bit of honing and development, and yeah, I mean, it's just waiting to see if it works. And also it's a global thing. So, I feel like there's definitely like a movement in, maybe like, well, I actually don't know this. I feel like there's a movement in like LA or New York, like over that way somewhere, where they are like super kind of in tune with their dogs and really like into their dogs. And there's a lot of, like city dwelling people, because I feel like we do get disconnected unless you're making an effort to go to, like, I don't know, regular drum circles or gardening clubs, or,
It's true, because communities are online now, and we're all just like, we live in, some of us in cities, some in the countryside, wherever, on the outskirts, villages, um, but we're all just kind of like ships in the night, really. Like, I mean, having a dog makes it a little bit easier, because by default, that person is seeking connection. It's
yeah.
almost like a talk to me, like, or you're welcome, or come pet my dog. Not, I'm not saying go pet everyone's dog, but you know what I mean? Like, it's just, yeah, it's an excuse to engage with people and not feel like a weirdo.
Well, yeah. Although there's another side to that coin, in that, you've got the problem with dogs running over and saying, it's okay, he's friendly. And then you're just like, get off me, like, please call your dog. And so it actually has the potential to create rifts in the park, where some people are responsible and some people are less responsible. And then the responsible people have to deal with the less responsible people's dogs.
Yes.
So, it definitely can create the opposite problem, in that you start to just think, do you know what, I can't even be bothered to go to the park today because I kind of want to deal with the idiots there.
Yeah, it depends on what type of dog you have as well, kind of what the I was really excited to get a dog, because I thought, oh, I can't wait to do my, like, have my start my fostering journey, and like just talk to people. And it's, again, it's about the dog, but byproducts of having the dog is being able to connect with other dog people. But the thing is, yeah, exactly as you say, now if I go to a park or in the woods or anything, I do speak to people, but I tend to speak to people when they have their dogs on a lead, and we're like comfortably apart from each other, because I don't know how Duna, my foster dog, is going to react to their dog, and I don't know how their dog is going to react to my dog. So yeah, that kind of counteracted the vision that I had in my head for what it would look like. But I've adjusted. It's not ideal. I'd love to, like, let's all play together and let's all become friends. That's the ideal scenario. But unfortunately, I agree with you. There are responsible and slightly less responsible dog owners out there. So it's a bit of a risk. There's always a bit of a risk, isn't it?
Yeah.
So it ends up being a little bit not lonely, but it can be quite isolating, when the whole point was to not be more isolated.
Yeah, and that's kind of loops us back to what I was saying. Like, when I was a kid, you used to just walk past and say hello. That there wasn't really a culture of that, because that would be satisfied in other areas. And like how I was saying in London, that they don't have that, or some people in London don't necessarily have a strong family or friendship groups. And so maybe the people in the park and their dogs are their kind of social group, which then creates problems for the dogs. So, it's that dogs aren't quite the right thing for us to like fold in socially, because ideally you're teaching your dog in the park to ignore all other people and all other dogs.
All right. So
And
from a dog trainer behaviorist perspective, that what you recommend?
yeah, normally in the park, you're teaching dogs to ignore other people and dogs in the park. And that's for lots of different reasons, mainly to do with socialization. So that, and I mean, this is a whole rabbit hole by itself. But, there's a lot of like legal, like, your dog's never going to get in trouble legally if it doesn't run over to other people, because the only people that are going to report your dog are the other people in the park. And the more that your dog goes to the park and plays with other dogs, the less important it is for your dog to stay with you and respond to you when you need your dog to come back. So it's almost like the other dogs in the park are competing factors to your responsive recall to your dog. Then also, once your dog's already playing, it's hard for them to leave the play. And if they want to leave the play, they have to do like an aggressive display to stop the play from happening, which is then giving your dog a chance to practice aggression, which is something that we don't tolerate in society. So we teach, or like what I recommend and what I teach is that we prevent our dogs from being in any situation where they need to use aggression. So then we would protect them from the other dogs. If they are feeling that they want to be aggressive to another dog, we protect them from the other dog. So they don't need to use their teeth, and then that helps the other dog to trust you more, and so it improves your relationship with your dog by protecting your dog. Your dog learns, oh, I don't have to use my teeth. You've got this covered. I'll just hang back and hide behind you and you deal with it.
Right.
That's a better scenario, a safer scenario for everybody.
How do dogs socialize then? Is that not a need?
So this is this is the problem with the word socialization, is that it actually means raising a being according to its social status, not how we use it. Go and play with your mates, you know.
Right.
Um, yeah, and so it has a secondary meaning. It's just that that secondary meaning is the one that's meant when it comes to puppy socialization. So correct puppy socialization is teaching your puppy to ignore other dogs or to be around role model dogs that also ignore other dogs. So that's a whole issue that is across the board. Mainly, I think it came from the States where they did puppy socialization parties back in the day, which then came over to the UK, this puppy socialization party, which essentially would be raising feral dogs. If your dog is playing with other dogs every day, then it's erring more on the side of feral dog behavior than it is of companion dog behavior.
Hmm. Okay, but that's from a companion dog perspective, as in like from an owner, from a guardian's perspective, that benefits the human. But what do dogs need? Do they not need that?
Yeah, so they need people. So when we get a puppy, we put their primary social group when we get a puppy as other dogs. And so when we take a companion puppy, and I'm thinking like Lassie in my head when I say this, when we take a companion puppy home, we raise that puppy in a world full of people. And so that puppy then becomes the humans become that puppy's primary social group. You can do it like I work with livestock guardian dogs as well, and you take the puppy and you put it in with sheep, and then the sheep become that dog's primary social group. There's been lots of studies. I think there was one with budgies and humans and switching social groups. So you can, so to have a brilliant companion dog, and again I'm thinking Lassie level, you want your dog to be able to be fluent in your facial expressions, your body language, like your human behavior,
Uh-huh.
and you want the your dog is already fluent in dog language by 6 to 8 weeks old, so it doesn't need that necessarily anymore. He needs now to learn about the human language, the human behavior. So to do that, he has to be around people. So what I always say is it's easy to explain it if it's like language. So if I go to Portugal and I hang around with English people, then I will learn very little Portuguese, which may have actually happened. And it would be, hello, goodbye, can I have the bill, please? Let's say,
Yeah.
right? You go on holiday, that's what you learn. If I come with English people, that's what I'm learning. Whereas if I go to Portugal and I go to the middle of nowhere, there's no English people and there's only Portuguese people, I'm going to become fluent, hopefully, in Portuguese between like from 6 to 12 months, it'll probably take. So when you take a puppy from a litter of puppies, and you place that puppy in a human household, that puppy will become fluent in human language within 6 to 12 months.
Wow. Okay.
Have another dog in that household, and you put your puppy in with that other dog, that other dog will prevent the second dog from becoming fully fluent in human language. So he will essentially, the second puppy, or it could be if that puppy is spending a lot of time at, say, like daycare or with other dogs every day, then that puppy will learn the equivalent of hello, goodbye, can I get the bill, please? You know, it learns like a stunted version of human language. And you always see, like, people always get a first dog and they're like, this is amazing. I love my dog so much. The only thing that is better than this is going to be two of him. But the second dog never turns out the way that the first dog did, because the second dog, essentially, you could see it as like the second dog is the first dog's pet, because the second dog normally is like obsessed with the first dog because that's his social group that he knows. Whereas the first dog didn't have another dog, so he's fully fluent in human language because that's his social group that he knows, the humans.
Gotcha. Okay, I understand. Just out of curiosity, is this, because I'm not a behaviorist, I'm not a dog trainer, is this common knowledge across all dog behaviorists and dog trainers? Is this like something you learn at behavior school?
I hope so. I mean, I trained with John Ruddison, he's died now. And So anyone that's trained with him will have that perspective. I feel like nobody ever used to know this, right? Like everybody always used to think that like puppies playing with other puppies was like the be all and end all. But I feel like now I've started seeing Instagram reels where it's teaching people or like they're talking about dogs ignoring other dogs. And I feel like that's it feels relatively new, but whether that's just on my Instagram, I don't know. But
Isn't that just a safety thing? I'm thinking more in terms of, that is a dog living in a human-centric world, but if it was a dog-centric environment, like what's best for the dog, not in the human. You know what I mean? Like there's a slight adjustment you've got to make. It's not always there's what's good for the dog as a separate entity, and there's what's good for a dog in a human world.
yeah, they're two very different things,
Yeah.
unfortunately. Yeah, because obviously what's like you can look at dogs in primitive environments or street dogs, like in India or anywhere where they have street dog populations. In fact, there's some in Portugal. It's really lovely to see actually because it's amazing to see how dogs behave when there's no fences and when they can actually make their own choices. Um in fact, I did share something on my Instagram yesterday. I think you saw it about that man with his he was in India and a dog had followed him on his when he was doing a bike ride.
Yeah,
Oh
the
no, he
man
was
with a
running
brain
actually.
tumor.
Yeah, and he was running across India and he had this dog follow him and I was just like, I love that that dog got to decide to go with him because our dogs in the UK and in human society don't normally get to make decisions like that.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's something really special about like a dog being able to make their own decisions, which we don't really have in our society. Like I have a deal with my dogs where I've got quite a few boundaries in the house, but when they go out on a walk, they can do whatever they want as long as they come back when I call them. Like
Mhm.
that's our kind of setup. Um, and but yeah, like what's good for dogs is probably not human society. It's very overwhelming for them. There's a lot of things that they don't understand. It's easy for us when we say, okay, well, I understand what the postman is, I understand what the bus is, I know why there's a wheelie trolley going down the street. Like it all makes sense to us. And our dogs don't really understand any of it. And so that's why they're so dependent on our relationship with us and why we have to be the ones that say, hey, I've got your back, don't worry about this, which normally involves having a shorter lead and keeping your dog closer to you or behind you, which a lot of people don't do, especially with the dawn of the stupid extendable leads, which has got that's another rabbit hole. So they're dependent on us to interpret the environment and keep them safe. Whereas if we don't protect them in our environment, then they learn to protect themselves in our environment. And that's when you get problems because they shouldn't have to protect themselves in our environment. That's where the aggression stems from and all sorts of problems.
Wow, that is a whole other can of worms, that one. Because ultimately, yeah, that's what I mean, yeah, they are captives and they have no autonomy really. We decide everything for them, who they socialize with, when they eat, when they drink, when they go to the loo, you know. Yeah, I haven't thought about it in this way with regards to like, stepping in and showing them, okay, you don't need to worry type of thing. Where can I learn more about that? Is that, and pardon my ignorance, but that's not dominance theory, is it?
No, and I don't really agree with dominance theory, and but there is some kind of overlaps, like with like what I call decision making. So, and the way I think of it is when you go on holiday with your friends, there's always like that one friend that nails it every time. She knows the best cocktail bars, the
Yeah.
best restaurants. I'm going to go with what she says. Yeah. And so like, I always think of it like that. Like, someone's got to make the decisions and someone's going to be better at making the decisions than others.
Yeah.
And between me and my dog, I'm going to be better at making the decisions because I understand the environment. That would be like if you were going away with your friends and let's say you were going to Porto and one of your friends lived in Porto for 5 years. She's going to know a lot more than your other friends who've never been here before. So when we apply that to our dogs, like we know our environment inside out, like we understand people's behavior. We understand why somebody is doing that. And when we don't understand human behavior, we get terrified. So for our dogs, it's easier for us to say, I understand everything that's going on. Stay back and I'll take care of it. Like we'll
Mhm.
just do this together and we can be a team.
But how
And
do we know? How do we know that they are okay with relinquishing control of their or autonomy? How do we
well,
know? Do they just submit to us? Do we just break them in the process of taking away? their choices?
No, I don't think it's necessarily taking away their choices, because they do have to be able to make choices in other places.
Okay.
So, whether that's like on a walk or at home, or, like it's not that we control every aspect of their lives. They do need freedom to make their own choices. And normally we see that on a walk. So that's why I said, like with my dogs, you can do whatever you want as long as you come back when I call you. So then I know that, like, if there's a football match or a picnic or something, like I have a deal with them where they're not going to get themselves in trouble. But when it comes to, do our dogs want to be protected or not? Definitely the easiest place to look at that is with anxious dogs. Like most anxious dogs, okay, they depending on the breed, there might be some resistance in the beginning. Like, you don't know what you're doing. I need to take care of this. You don't know. I know, because that's what they're used to and that's how they've survived. Especially then with rescue dogs, they're like, you don't know what you're talking about. I'm going to do this. I've been doing me this whole time and I've never let myself down. And But mostly with anxious dogs, you can see that they're happy to they almost kind of do an audible sigh sometimes, where you're like, no, it's okay, I've got this. And you put them behind your back or behind a chair or whatever it is. And they'll just go, oh, thank God. But
Right.
it depends on the breed. Like there are like, and also depends on their life experience. Like a lot of us, some of them have learned to behave like that for survival. And so, that's a mammal thing, right? Like we all do that. And so it's through changing our behaviors and changing what they have to deal with that then maybe it might take a little bit longer to explain, hey, this isn't your problem. You can chill out. You can just like poodle along behind me or with me, or, like I've got this. Doesn't matter what comes up. It can be a troll, a hairy monster, a car driving in front of us. I've got this. Okay.
Yeah.
So, and most dogs are happy with that, within reason. Like there'll be some that are some people are just like, no, my dog would not like that.
But they have to be. They have to be. I guess that compliance ensures an easy life. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, well, this is why dogs have evolved so well with us, is because most dogs are fine with that. They're like, yeah, okay, feed me and stroke me. I'm done. Like they're
Yeah.
happy with that mostly. And so within, reason, like working dogs, that's a whole nother rabbit hole, which we don't need to go down now. But most dogs, especially if they're suited to the environment, so that's typically smaller dogs, and by environment I mean city, really,
Uh-huh.
and the average person's lifestyle. Like mostly that will be like smaller dogs breeds that are bred for companions, to be a companion. And so there's lots of dogs that are suitable as companions. We don't necessarily need to be having dogs like border collies or huskies or any of these ridiculous dogs that you're just like, oh, how could it possibly have gone wrong? I
Yeah.
don't know.
Well, I was speaking to a breeder recently, and I just said to him what's the main reason why people get dogs? And he was saying that it's appearance, what they look like. So I would hazard a guess that a lot of people who end up getting border collies or getting any kind of working dog in an urban environment could be because of what they look like. It could remind them of a dog that they liked when they were a child, or it might be some connection there. But yeah, I bet a lot of people don't actually know what to look for. Um, and to even kind of make that deduction that, okay, this is the environment and this is the kind of dog that I'm looking for. Because within those breeds, you've also got this split of, like I recently learned, that you've got, kind of the companion version of a Belgian Malinois and you've got the working version of a Malinois. You could actually, is that not true?
Well, I mean, it's the first I'm hearing of it, but if we're saying that, there would have to be a lot of generations where
Yeah.
somebody's picked the calmest of the litter, which, and there has to be a lot of generations where you pick the calmest of the litter, given that the Malinois is so highly strung in the first place. You'd have to be like, I don't think, unless somebody's been working on this project and I haven't heard of it for like the last, I don't know, 30, 40, 50 years, I'm pretty sure that that is not going to be developed enough. And that sounds to me like a marketing scam, which there's so many of them. Like there's so many
Oh my
ways that
goodness.
breeders think of to market their dogs, but there's always something. There's always like a, I don't know, a miniature what, miniature Australian Shepherd or something stupid. Like you just there's a whole problem. But actually, what you just mentioned, there's something really interesting there with the way that people choose dogs, and it is often appearance, and sometimes it can be influenced by boring things like media or like films, photos,
Oh
like
yeah, that's very common, yeah.
yeah. But there's another interesting thing which I find fascinating, and it's from what I can tell, and this is just my observations, like when people prefer like more natural looking dogs, so like sticky up ears, curly tail, like the Spitz family, or like, for example, this husky problem that we have when people get huskies, that seems to correlate to people that don't necessarily fit in or agree with society. Not like, have I simplified that? Maybe. Like there's a part of them that maybe feels like an outcast, or that like they are like anti-establishment or whatever it is, you know, like a more kind of wild person, a lone wolf, that whole kind of dynamic. And then you get like floppy eared, two-toned. In fact, there are some studies, because there was a rescue center that realized that the dogs that were getting adopted were of two coat colors and with floppy ears, right? So then they would have solid coat colors. Like black dogs were really hard to find homes for, especially black dogs with sticky up ears. I'm thinking like Anubis, like you don't see them very often, but these dogs weren't getting adopted. And so what they did was they wrote poems and things on the wall and decorated their kennel to be more like fluffy or cute or whatever. And people then stopped to read the thing. And so the dog was then getting looked at because of, they'd made more effort with the kennel. Because what was happening before is they just walked past the dogs that weren't appealing to them. And so they were getting sad. And I can't remember what kennel that was, but it was somebody had done it a long time ago. And just actually, there was a fox study as well, where they, talking about the Malinois, they selected the calmest foxes out of litters, and they eventually came out with a tame fox. But that fox didn't look like the original fox. Like it had then like more coat colors, and like his ears were not so sticky up or something like that. And so there's definitely then like a correlation between dogs that are maybe more primitive in behavior, that maybe have sticky up ears. And maybe, do we know that innately? I don't know. Like I have a breed of dog that has sticky up ears and a curly tail. And I know that I was anti-establishment. So like that does obviously, like, I'm going to think that. But I wanted a natural looking dog because I don't like, there's a part of me that resents people for interfering in nature, And so I'd see that in dogs as well. And obviously that carries over to breeds like pugs and bulldogs, the Cavalier Spaniel, where they have extreme health problems. And there's still a part of me that resents people for having done that to dogs. And then obviously then there's the cropped ears and then I can get really into like all the injustices, but then that's choosing the kind of the negative path. So leave that there. But it's all a reflection. Like this whole thing with dogs is a reflection of us. So even down to the breeds that we choose. And I can always tell about people with what dogs that they've chosen.
It's like someone said the other day, what did he say? It's like associate certain breeds with the live, laugh, laugh people. Something like that. And I was like, that's so wrong, but I get it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but which dog is in your head now? It's floppy ears, it's got two coat colours, and it looks like a teddy bear. Yeah. So it's I mean, I think it must have been researched a little bit, but I don't have anything to back up what I'm saying.
There must be some weird connection there somehow. Not physically look like, but I guess maybe characteristics. It's all identity, isn't it? Everything that we buy, everything that we have, everything is just an extension of ourselves, or how we perceive ourselves to be, or how we want to be perceived.
Which comes back to being able to create your own reality. Like the choices that you're making every day creates the world around you. And actually, like, it goes what we're talking about with like, you look like your dog. It's like, okay, staffies now have a bit of a better reputation, but back in the day, like all these bull breeds were like gang dogs, right? And because they look threatening and they've got short hair and they're muscly and they want to be, and that comes back to status symbols, which is a whole nother problem, which we don't need to go off down. But it just goes in loops where it's just all linked together and it's all a reflection and it's all tied in. So essentially, canine facilitated coaching is just another one of those reflective modalities that I'm trying to make actually useful to people, instead of like, oh, isn't that funny? Oh.
Yeah, but even that reflective reflective modality in itself is an identity, like that, because you immediately know what type of people would go for that, or at least I do. You know what I mean? So,
well, it gets funnier than that. So, in fact, one of my coachees pulled me up on this. At one point, like after the breakdown of my last relationship, I wanted to really study like relationship counseling and really like the whole relationship, everything, attachment theory and all of it. And then my coachee was like, you know that you're doing this via dogs because you can't do it to people directly. Like you have to have the dogs holding your hand. And I was like, oh yeah.
Please unpack that.
So that comes back to like the whole anti-human thing, is that like, you know, maybe I didn't have a voice, maybe I'm not very confident. I mean, these aren't maybes, these are real. Like I'm just saying maybe to like soften it a little bit. But yeah, like there's a lot of, you know, issues that I have that I seek support in dogs.
Right.
And the dogs give me confidence. Like, and also I probably had dogs when I lived in London. I probably had dogs because then people noticed who I was, like they saw me. Whereas I'd always feel like invisible or not very like noticeable or, you know, very bland or whatever. And I have these really striking dogs. I have this Alaskan Kiki, which looks like a small husky. And I mean, there's another reason for that. Like, I actually wanted a street dog because, like I said, I wanted a natural dog, but I couldn't get a street dog at the time. So I got this Alaskan Kiki. Anyway, they're striking to look at. And so everybody, when they walk down the street, they're like, oh. And what happened was you know, in my community on Kings Road where I lived, people knew me when I was with the dog. And then whenever I went out without the dog, nobody knew who I was. I was like, hey. And they're like, well, oh, it's you. So, you know, like I've always had, and it's probably a bit of social awkwardness. Yeah. So I remember like when I first came to this community in Portugal, I was absolutely bricking it. Like I was terrified. I was like, oh my God, I've never been around this many people before. Like, how am I going to cope? Like, why am I even here? What am I doing? And I remember finding a dog on day one and being like, oh, I found a dog, panic over. And so I just always gravitate towards the dogs. And like any situation I'm in, like if I feel uncomfortable, I will go and stroke the dog, like, or I'll just call the dog to me, or like there's always a dog helping me get through something at some point, like if I'm uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And so obviously like it was a big challenge for me to like go into coaching people. And, you know, like I did a life coaching course, but that was for people and there wasn't any dogs in that. And I was like, it's uncomfortable. And then now, like, I mean, I could maybe be a life coach for actual humans, but that would feel uncomfortable. So now I'm life coaching people with their dogs.
Do you know what? You are your clients.
I know.
So you've got a very unique insight there, not just all of the cases that you've dealt with as a trainer and as a behaviorist, but also now as a life coach.
Yeah. The first time I had to leave my dog when I went on holiday, I cried. And I was like, and my mum was like laughing at me. She was like, why are you crying? She's going to be fine. Like, and now when I think back about it, I was like, that's bizarre. Why was I crying? But at the time, it felt really real. And it was the first time I'd left her since I had her. And it was obviously not a big deal. Like logically, it wasn't a big deal. But whatever was happening inside was a big deal for me at the time. So like I do have a way to like, because I feel like I've come through it. And okay, maybe I've been working with dogs for too long because sometimes now they annoy me and I'm like, oh, go away. um, it happens. So, you know, like I've kind of come through the other side I mean, I have a 7-year-old actual human child.
I was going to
So,
ask you actually, do you feel the same? Is it the same having a child versus having a dog?
it's
In
way
terms
more.
of the need that you need to have met or the
Yeah, I feel like,
companion?
well, obviously, like now she's 7, like she's so much more, like has so much more autonomy now. So, you know, like firstly, like that whole experience was like changed my life. And that probably did help me like return to like humans and women and like heal my relationship with my mother and then like go down that whole like feminine lineage ancestry thing that I'm just like, oh my God, now I get it. Oh. And but yeah, like it's kind of, it feels the same as how I used to feel about my dogs before I had a child, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So before I had a child, my dogs were like my everything. But now I have a child, my dogs are almost my everything because I have an everything,
Yeah.
if that makes sense. So it is the same feeling that just swaps onto something else. I feel this could just be me, but then like times a million, because then obviously like that whole child for the rest of their life, and then they can speak English. So then they tell you stuff that like you're doing wrong and you're just like, what? So it's very different, but there's a lot of similarities. And that's why I think that like we have this innate instinct and it needs to be satisfied somehow. And currently our culture favors dogs.
Mm.
So that's why I feel like that. So it is a lot to do with my personal experiences and how I view the world. But I feel like when I tell people about it, they relate to it and it makes sense. So that's how I kind of have justified that.
Yeah. No, that's really interesting. I would really love to see, I don't know, some kind of data.
I did hear that there was a big corporation, I think the Mars Corporation, doing a study on like the complexities of the human animal companion bond.
Was it Mars Pet Care?
I think so, yeah. I think they're starting a study that is going to be going into like how our dogs or pets, I can't remember if it was dogs or pets, impact our emotional well-being, I think it was.
Mm-hmm.
But this was recent, I think. I'm not sure if they've come up with anything yet.
Okay, I'll look into that.
I think it was going to be a big study, like over a longer term and like a global, like something big.
It sounds like that would be really useful.
Um, a lot of what we're talking about is rebalancing the dynamic between humans and dogs, because people might get a dog because with their own kind of selfish motivations maybe, but then their priority becomes the dog, and so like the suffering isn't
Oh,
necessarily just the dog, it's the people are suffering as well. And it's not, I feel like,
just an
I mean there's
emotional band-aid.
yeah, yeah, it's an escapism as well. But there's so much beauty in a relationship between people and dogs that it's not like everything's lost. It's just that maybe people need to come home to themselves and think, do you know what? I've survived this far. You know, I'm X amount of years old. I'm doing okay. And even if I'm not doing okay, I know that at some point I will be doing okay. And to get through that, and okay, it's fine if a dog is the only thing getting you through that, then that's, you know, an honorable position for the dog, I would feel, you know. But to know that everything is going to be okay eventually, I think is kind of what keeps us going, you know, like having our relationship with our dog. And it's never like this is too late to teach an old dog new tricks. Like it's never that for the dog or the person, you know. And sometimes like I'll be in sessions with people and it'll just be really simple things and they'll be like, oh my God, this has changed everything. And like for me, that's obviously massive job satisfaction. But for the dog, it's made a world of difference. And you know, like you can't change the world or whatever, but that for the dog, for that one dog, you've changed their world or whatever it is. You know the quote I mean.
Yeah.
Um, and you know, there is a part of me that thinks I wish I could do like more on a bigger scale. You know, and do I need to write a book or start an online course or, you know, like try and free up like information for more people to like make more of a difference. But also I really enjoy working one-on-one because I like the intimacy of it. I like to be able to like connect with somebody. And that goes back to community, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. But then also facilitating, hopefully, eventually, other people being able to connect with others who are on a similar journey. I would like for you to maybe, take this as a use this platform. If someone's made it this far and they might be interested in exploring, deepening their bond with their dog, having a chat with you, how do they find you?
So at the moment, my Instagram is my most stable place. So that's the one I mentioned earlier, at Hannah Greeno _. And to send me a DM on there, then I can get the ball rolling or just speak or answer questions. Or it's definitely, like you say, it's quite niche and it's quite abstract. So, you know, it takes a lot of explaining to kind of understand what we're doing here. And it took
Yeah.
me ages to work out what was going on, you know? So, yeah, I think just get in touch. Probably just send me a message on Instagram or, I mean, I feel like my email might not necessarily be, I don't know if I'm changing my email or not, basically.
Okay, well, Instagram it is then. If anyone's interested, reach out to Hannah, have a chat, just explore, just lean in with curiosity and see where it leads.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, that would be cool. Oh my gosh, Hannah, I wish we had more time, but unfortunately, I don't have enough time to edit these podcasts every week.
Oh, no, I you bless you, like sit like going through and like deleting all my likes or something. I'm like, oh my God, why do I say it so much?
No,
Like,
no,
picking
you're
up
fine.
space.
No, you're fine. You're lovely. It was a really lovely chat. Thank you so much for your time. And I'm just so grateful. It's a very different conversation to be having, but I'm just buzzing off of all these different people I get to speak with. And I mean, it's wacky, it's weird, it's wonderful. Everyone is different. It's a proper mixed bag I'm discovering. I'm speaking to really, really people I wouldn't normally have had an opportunity to speak with. So I'm just very grateful. I'm just happy to be here. So thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. My pleasure. And I think it's amazing, the podcast. And like when I read the intro paragraph, I was like, oh my gosh, this is incredible, like aligned with what I'm like feeling and feeling into at the moment, but also that you're kind of keeping an open mind and going across everybody, like different places and speaking to different people and not pigeonholing into like what you think is the right thing or what somebody else thinks is the right thing. You'd be more like investigative with it. And I think that's an incredible perspective to hold. And to not kind of get folded into, oh, well, this is right, this is wrong, and this is how it's always going to be, and be real closed-minded with it,
Well, it's a struggle. I'm going to be honest with you, because I have to question my own biases and ultimately just remind myself that I am ignorant. I don't know enough about anything to have a very strong opinion about anything. So going forward, I just have to remind myself to stay open, be curious, listen. That's it.
Incredible.
So yeah, we try. Every conversation is an opportunity for me to do better. So yeah. Anyways, thank you for being part of that journey.
Thank you for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I love speaking to you.
Same, ditto. Right. Well, I hope your business goes super well, and if it ends up having legs, we'll have you back on again so you can talk us through some of those case studies and connect with more people.
Amazing. Yeah, I look forward to that.